Hola, I'm Hannah from SpeakBetterSpanish.com. Today we're going to be talking about Spanish confidence. This is so important. So as an English speaker learning Spanish, it's natural to feel somewhat unconfident when you are first learning. So it's natural to feel nervous speaking with native speakers. It's natural to just feel uncomfortable with your knowledge of the language. That happens to everybody, so don't worry, you're not alone. I have been there as well. But today I'm going to talk you through a couple of tips on how you can start to feel more comfortable and more confident speaking Spanish, even with native speakers, regardless of your level of Spanish knowledge. So the first tip is try not to worry what other people think of you. I know that is like the hardest thing for self-confidence just in general, but try not to worry what other people think of you. In general, people are thinking more of themselves than they are worrying about other people, and that applies with speaking another language as well. So think about what I like to remind my students is when someone who English is not their native language comes and speaks to you, I always appreciate them making an effort, even if they don't say everything 100% correct. As long as, they're making an effort, they're trying to speak your language, I appreciate that, and I have found that has been my experience with Spanish speakers as well, that they are very accommodating and very grateful that you are making an effort, and so they appreciate that. And the next thing is, and this is kind of tricky to come to terms with, but there's what you could call a pain period, or this period where it's going to be uncomfortable for you speaking Spanish, and that's just the way of it, and you're going to have to continue to speak anyway, even though it's uncomfortable, because that's the only way you're going to get better. So unfortunately, you can study grammar and the language and the rules as much as you want, but if you don't use it in conversation regularly, then you're not going to get better. And so there are going to be times where you're not going to say everything 100% correct, and I know that's uncomfortable and I know that's hard, but the more that you continue to practice and trying to get your point across, the better you'll get, and the more your conversational skills will improve and your confidence will grow as well. So unfortunately, it's one of those things where you kind of just have to tough it out and say, I know I'm not saying this 100% correct, but you'll make the effort, and that's how you'll improve. So you'll just have to work through that uncomfortable time. That's something that we all work through. Even I feel nervous sometimes. I know I don't say things 100% correct 100% of the time, but if you can get your point across, then you have successfully communicated. And after all, isn't that what learning a language is about? Not to know it perfectly, perhaps that might be an end goal, but to be able to communicate your point and to express things to speakers of that language. Another thing to keep in mind for Spanish confidence is context. So different things can mean different words. Different words can mean different things in different scenarios, same in English, same in Spanish, in any language. So if you're asking someone for clarification, like you want to say como se dice and then some word in English, it's best if you give them the overall context, not just that word. And this is something that I sometimes forget, so I totally understand if you're there. I have been there as well. I'll give you an example of this. So if you say como se dice used, so you're asking me how do you say used in Spanish, I'm going to say to you, well, can you tell me the rest of the sentence, or what's the rest of the context? Because if we're talking about like a used car, then that's one thing. But if we're talking about, in this particular scenario that a student had asked about, was they wanted to say, I used to talk. Well, in that case, used to talk, we're just going to put the verb to talk in the imperfect. So yo hablaba instead of un coche viejo or un carro viejo would be like a used car, so it's an older car, or un carro usado. So depending on the context, that's going to make a lot of difference in the word choice. And another thing that happens a lot is when you are learning Spanish as an English speaker, sometimes you'll have to rephrase what you want to say. So if you can think of that sentence of whatever it is that you want to say in English, try to think of it in a couple of different ways of phrasing it. So maybe you use a different verb, or you put things in a slightly different order. Like, how many different ways can you say the same thing, but it still gets across the same point? Because often you might not be able to translate an exact sentence exactly the way you want. So I'll give you an example of this. So if you want to say most of my friends, and this kind of applies to the context as well, Well, the word for most in Spanish, the closest thing that I can think of would be mayoría. So that means the majority of my friends. So la mayoría de mis amigos. So if you were to kind of rephrase that, so most of my friends, like, okay, what are some other ways that I could say that? If you were to come on majority, then perhaps you might make the connection, oh, mayoría, okay, now I know how to say it. So you may actually have the tools and you just don't realize it. So rephrasing it in English can help you to make that connection and be able to say something with the vocabulary and the knowledge that you already have in a way that might not have occurred to you at first. And my final tip for Spanish confidence is to use similar English words when you can. So there are a lot of words that are very similar between the languages, like mucho can mean much or a lot, grande can mean big or grand. So there are a lot of similar words that can help you out even without having a huge vocabulary. You know, just drawing those parallels between the languages can be really helpful. So I hope that this has helped you. And my final tip for Spanish confidence is just to pick a phrase and then just say to yourself, I'm going to say just this one thing. I'm gonna go up to a Spanish speaker, I'm gonna say just this one thing. You don't have to go up with the intention of having a long, elaborate conversation. You can go up with the intention of simply saying, Hola, ¿cómo está usted? Hi, how are you? And that's it. Like, that can be your only intention. You have that memorized in your head. Hola, ¿cómo está usted? Hola, ¿cómo está usted? You see a Spanish-speaking person, you go over and say, Hola, ¿cómo está usted? The more that you can do that and the more that you can have positive interactions, the more confident you're going to feel. So I hope that these tips helped you. Don't worry, you are definitely not alone if you are struggling with Spanish confidence. But as I said, practice makes perfect, so keep trying. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click the little bell notification to turn on notifications for any new videos as I release them. And you can also check out my website by clicking the square that says Learn More. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.